They weren't looking for anyone, just tracks, signs of movement between the rocks, light animal prints, maybe soldiers. It was a cold morning, the kind that makes silence feel heavier. Coyotl and Nashoba, two of the most experienced scouts from the White Mountain Apache tribe, walked in silence, like ghosts between the pines. But that day, they found something neither of them could explain with simple words. Between two fallen logs, wrapped in a dirty blanket, a child slept. Alone. Still. She looked maybe 7 years old, maybe 8. Her hair was light, her face pale, marked by dirt and scratches. But what stood out most was how peacefully she slept. Calm, as if that cold forest floor was a featherbed. Coyotl looked at Nashoba. Nashoba looked back. They didn't need words. This made no sense. No child survives alone out here more than a day or two, especially not one like her. Nashoba crouched slowly, careful not to scare her, but the moment he reached out, her eyes opened. Green. Green like spring leaves at first bloom. And then, she smiled. "Are you a spirit?" she asked, in a soft voice, completely unafraid. The men glanced at each other again, this time more unsettled. "No, little one," Coyotl finally answered. "We're forest men." "Then, am I dead?" "No, you're very much alive." She sat up, rubbed her eyes, and yawned, like she'd just woken up in her own bed. And there, in the middle of nowhere, she said, "I live here now." "Where are your parents?" Nashoba asked gently. She looked around like she was only just realizing she was alone. "I don't know. The forest found me, I think." Coyotl frowned. That wasn't something a child says. It sounded like she'd been carried here by the wind, like she was born from the soil itself. They offered her water and some dried meat. She took it like she'd seen it before, but when she saw the feather necklace around Coyotl's neck, her eyes lit up. "That's pretty," she said, pointing. "It's for protection." "I have something too." From inside her blanket, she pulled out a small blue stone, smooth, polished, so vibrant it seemed to glow even in shadow. Coyotl felt a chill. That wasn't a normal rock. "Who gave you that?" "No one. I found it, near a sleeping deer." "Sleeping? Or dead?" But they didn't push, not yet. "We'll take you back," Nashoba said. "Back where?" "To our people. To camp." She paused, then nodded. "Okay, but the forest has to come too." Coyotl felt a strange shiver. He didn't know why. But the way she said that, it felt more like a warning than a request. The walk back was quiet. The girl, still unnamed, as she didn't seem to know it, walked without complaint, barefoot, in the cold. "It's like the earth carries her," Nashoba whispered, "like she belongs to it." Coyotl just nodded. He felt it too. When they reached the village, the reaction was instant. Children ran to see the new girl. Women whispered. Men frowned. A white child alone, brought back by scouts? That could mean trouble. But no one touched her. No one told her to leave. She walked among them like she already knew their faces, like she'd been there before. The old shaman, Enoli, was the last to come. Enoli hadn't left his tent in days. Said the spirits were restless, but when he saw her, he stepped out silently. His eyes, clouded by time, widened at the sight of her green ones. "She's no visitor," he murmured. Everyone turned. "She belongs to the forest." Nobody understood right away, but Coyotl felt a lump rise in his throat. That confirmed what his instincts were screaming. She hadn't been found. She had been sent. The girl didn't speak much that first night, but she didn't seem afraid either. Not of the strangers around her, not of the fires, not even of the wolves howling in the distance. Enoli watched her from the shadows, his expression unreadable. He whispered to the wind, tossed herbs into the flames, and listened to the way the smoke curled. It was how he spoke to the spirits. And that night, they answered. Coyotl sat beside him. "What do they say?" he asked quietly. Enoli didn't look away from the fire. "That she is not lost. She is returned." "Returned from where?" "The forest knows. We don't need to." Coyotl shook his head, frustrated. "But what is she? A settler's child? A spirit?" Enoli finally turned to him. "She's both," he said simply. The next morning, the girl was already awake when the village stirred. She sat by the water's edge, toes in the stream, humming a song no one recognized, a song that felt old. The children kept their distance at first, whispering, staring. Some mimicked her behind her back, others threw pebbles, trying to get a reaction. But she didn't flinch. She just turned slowly and smiled. "You're scared of me," she said. "That's okay. Sometimes I'm scared of me too." And then she laughed. Not mockingly, just amused. As if it didn't bother her. As if she understood something they didn't. By the third day, the forest animals had started coming closer to camp. A fox was spotted watching the girl from the edge of the trees. A red bird perched near her as she ate. Even a doe came within a few feet, calm, as if greeting an old friend. Neshoba saw it with his own eyes and muttered, "I've seen shamans pray for years and never draw animals like that." But it wasn't just animals. The plants near her sleeping spot grew faster, greener. One elder swore that her aching joints stopped hurting after the girl touched her hand. A mother said her baby slept better when the girl hummed nearby. They began to call her Nantli, little root, in their tongue, because it felt like she had roots growing under her feet, tying her to the earth. Still, there were questions, whispers. Where is she from? Why doesn't she remember her name? What if she brings danger? And then it came. 3 riders, foreign, military. They arrived near dusk. Dusty coats, hard eyes, rifles ready. The village froze. The girl stood up from where she'd been drawing patterns in the dirt with a stick. The tallest man, clearly in charge, stepped forward. "We're looking for a missing child. White, female. Name's Clara Thorne. Been gone over a week." Nobody spoke. Enoli walked forward slowly. "What does this child look like?" 8 years, blonde, freckles, green eyes. She wandered off during a wagon breakdown. Her folks are half out of their minds. Enoli nodded thoughtfully. The girl didn't move. The soldier spotted her and pointed. "That's her!" Coyotl stepped in front of him. "She's not ready." "What do you mean, not ready? That's a child, not a prophet." Enoli raised his hand, calm, firm. "Tonight we talk. Tomorrow she chooses." The men clearly didn't like it. But they saw the warriors gathering in the shadows. They saw how no one backed away, so they agreed, reluctantly. That night, the village sat in circle, fire blazing high. The girl sat across from Enoli, silent, as he began to speak. "You came to us through the trees," he said. "You carry a stone from the deer's grave. You walk with foxes and sing the wind to sleep. That is not nothing." She looked up at him. "I don't remember anything before the forest," she said. "It's like my old life is behind a wall. I don't know if I want to go back." Enoli nodded. "Sometimes forgetting is a gift, but not forever. The girl held her bluestone tight. What if I go back and don't belong? And what if you stay and never know who you were? The fire cracked. Then the girl looked across the flames, at the 3 men waiting at the edge of the village. Her lips trembled. What if I don't belong anywhere? No one answered, not right away, because sometimes there are no easy answers. But then a child, a quiet boy from the edge of the crowd, stepped forward. He had barely spoken to her, but now he walked right up to her and placed a feather in her hand. My sister died in the cold last winter, he said. I don't want you to go away too. She stared at the feather, then back at him. That night, she didn't sleep, and when the sun finally touched the treetops, she stood in the center of the village, stone in one hand, feather in the other. I'll stay, she said softly, for now. The soldiers argued, demanded, threatened, but Enoli simply pointed to the earth. She belongs here, and the earth agrees. The soldiers left angry. They didn't understand it. Couldn't. To them, she was just a missing girl who belonged in a house behind walls, eating from plates and learning how to curtsy. Not someone who sang to rivers or whispered to trees. Not someone who had been chosen, not found. But as they rode off, she didn't watch them go. She was sitting beside a willow tree, humming again. That same melody, the one no one recognized. Weeks passed, and with every sunrise, she became less like the world she'd come from, and more like the forest that had claimed her. She learned to track with Coyotl, learned to braid with the women. She ran with the other children through the meadows, bare feet slapping the dirt like drums. She laughed louder, slept deeper, dreamed wilder. But it wasn't all easy. There were some who never accepted her. An elder warrior named Taklishim called her Chidi Nadlehi, the changing bird. He didn't mean it kindly. She will fly away, he said, just like she came. Enoli didn't argue. He just smiled that old knowing smile of his. She may fly, he said, but maybe not alone. One night, under a blood moon, the girl woke screaming. The entire camp heard it. Her cries pierced the dark like arrows. She thrashed, fought invisible hands, sobbing for someone named Eleanor. When Enoli reached her, she was curled into a ball, clutching her stone like a lifeline. She was calling her mother, whispered one of the women. Enoli nodded. The wall is cracking. For days after, she was quiet again, distant, like a spirit caught between worlds. Then one morning, she walked to Enoli's tent. Can I ask something? She said, barely above a whisper. Always. What if... I don't want to remember. Enoli didn't answer right away. He poured a small bowl of cedar smoke and placed it between them. Memory is like water, he said. You can dam it up, but one day it will overflow. She stared into the smoke. I feel like there's 2 of me. One who lived before. One who's here now. And I don't know which is real. They both are, he said. But one of them is growing stronger. She didn't ask which, because she already knew. Days turned into months, and the girl, whom some still called Clara Thorne, stopped responding to that name. She answered to Nantli. She danced during the spring ceremonies, her feet in rhythm with the drums. She carried water to the elderly, sang lullabies to babies, shared her bluestone with children when they were afraid. But something inside her still stirred, a question with no words. And then came the stranger. He arrived at sunset, tall, dressed in black, face covered with dust and grief. He didn't come with soldiers. He came alone, and he brought something, a music box, carved with flowers, scratched by time. But when he opened it, the tune it played was the same one she always hummed. Everyone in the village froze, even Enoli. The man's hands trembled. "This belonged to my daughter," he said. "Clara." Nantley didn't move, didn't blink. The tune echoed through the trees like a ghost. "I followed the scouts who took her," the man continued. "I waited, watched. I saw her become something else. I didn't want to scare her, but I had to know if she remembered." Enoli stepped forward. "She remembers in her bones," he said. The man's eyes filled. "I want to see her, just once." The entire village watched as Nantley walked slowly to the center, her face blank, her hands clenched. When she saw the music box, she stopped. And then she whispered, "Eleanor." The man broke, fell to his knees. "Yes," he cried. "That's your mother's name. You remembered." Nantley stared at the box. "I used to sing that song," she said. He nodded, sobbing. "You loved it." Then she looked at him, really looked. "You're my father." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "Wait." She turned to Enoli. "I remember, but I don't want to leave." And Enoli, wise as always, said only, "You don't have to choose. Not yet." The man sat by the fire that night, silent, watching his daughter from across the flames. She didn't speak much, but when she finally did, it was this: "I was lost, and the forest held me. I can't forget that, even if I remember everything else." He nodded. "I don't want to take you. I just want to know you're alive." She smiled. "I am, but not the way I was." He left before sunrise, quietly, left the music box in her hands, and a letter she couldn't bring herself to read. Not yet, because some bridges can't be crossed all at once. Some need time. The music box became part of her now. She'd wind it before bed, letting its notes drift into the night. Not every night, just on the ones when the memories returned stronger. On those nights, she didn't speak. She just listened, as if the melody could keep the past and present from tearing each other apart. And slowly, the village accepted both versions of her. The old one, Clara Thorne, and the new one, Nantley, child of the forest. One afternoon, she sat beneath the same willow tree where she'd first hummed the tune. A group of children gathered around, asking her to tell a story. But not just any story. "Tell us how you came from the trees." She thought for a moment, eyes on the canopy above. "I didn't come from the trees," she said softly. "I came from the silence between them." The kids blinked, confused. "But what does that mean?" one asked. She smiled. "It means the forest didn't speak at first. It just listened. And when I had nothing left to say, it whispered back." Enoli overheard and smiled quietly to himself. Wisdom, he knew, sometimes came in small voices, but not everyone was at peace. Taklishim still watched her with wary eyes. "She walks like us, eats like us, but her blood is not ours," he said one evening. "She doesn't need to be," Enoli replied. "The forest doesn't check bloodlines before offering shelter." "Shelter is one thing," Taklishim growled. "Trust is another." Enoli didn't answer. Instead, he handed him a small pouch. Inside was a single raven feather. dyed blue at the tip. "What is this?" "A dream," the shaman said. "One she gave me, without words. That night, Taklishim dreamed of fire, of trees burning, of screams carried by wind, and in the center of it all, a small girl holding out a hand, not to fight, to pull him from the flames. When he woke, he didn't speak of the dream, but from that day forward, he never called her Chidi Nadlihi again. He called her sister. Time passed. Nantli grew stronger. She could ride bareback through narrow trails. She learned to paint symbols on rocks that warned travelers of danger. She listened to storms the way others listened to elders. And then came the trial. Every youth in the tribe had to face it. A night alone in the sacred grove. No fire, no food. Just the forest and their courage. When Enoli told her it was time, she didn't hesitate. "I'm ready." Some doubted, whispered that she wouldn't last, that the forest might turn on her. But Enoli simply smiled. "She doesn't enter the forest. She returns to it." They gave her nothing, just her hands and her heartbeat, and the music box, which she tucked into her robe. The grove was silent that night. Silent in a way that wasn't empty, but watchful. She sat in its center listening. At first all she heard was her breath. Then, the rustle of leaves, a branch snapping, a soft hum. Not hers. It was the forest answering back. She opened the music box, let it play. And this time, she sang along. Not words, just sounds. But somehow it felt right. And that's when they came. Not wolves, not bears, but shadows. Figures that looked like people, but weren't. Not quite. Eyes glowing like fireflies, limbs bending like wind. She didn't run, didn't cry. She just stood and held out the stone. The blue one, the first gift, the first clue. One of the figures stepped forward, touched it, then whispered, "Do you remember now?" She closed her eyes, and the memories poured in, not just of her parents, but of something older. A river she had fallen into, a current too strong, a drowning. And then, a hand, not human, pulling her from water, laying her gently beneath the trees. She gasped, staggering back. "I died," she whispered. The shadow figure nodded. "For a moment? But I came back. You were sent back. Why? Because the forest chose you." The figures faded like smoke and wind, but their words remained. She didn't sleep that night. She just sat in the stillness, letting the truth settle like morning dew. When the sun rose, the elders found her seated calmly, face pale, eyes older. She stood, brushed off her robe, and said, "I know who I am." She didn't explain, didn't need to, because they saw it. In the way the birds landed near her feet, in the way the grass leaned toward her steps, in the way Enoli bowed his head as she passed. She was no longer just a girl. She was something more, a bridge between what was lost and what could be found. The season turned. Leaves burned gold and red. The air grew sharp. Frost kissed the morning grass. Winter was near. And with it came choices. Enoli knew it. So did Nantli. One evening, as snow threatened the horizon, the shaman called her to his tent. He sat beside the fire, stirring herbs into a clay bowl, steam curling up like spirits in dance. "You've walked many paths," he said. "Now another one waits. She nodded, already knowing. "My father," she whispered. "He'll come back." "He might," Inoli said. "Or he might not. But that isn't the choice that matters." She looked up. "Then what is?" "Whether you go looking for him, or stay with those who found you." She didn't answer. Couldn't, because her heart was split clean down the middle. That night she took a walk, alone, through the quiet trees. She found the willow again. Her place. The stream was frozen at the edges. The wind carried whispers, and she finally asked the question that had lived inside her chest for too long. Why me? No one answered. But something shifted. A shape emerged from the shadows. Not quite human, not quite shadow. The same figure from the sacred grove. Only this time, clearer. Its voice wasn't loud, but it reached into her bones. "You were between worlds," it said. "Dying, but not gone." "I should have drowned," she whispered. "Yes, but the forest caught you." "Why?" "Because it saw your soul, not as it was, but as it could become." She swallowed. "I'm just a girl." "No, you are a seed, and seeds become roots." The figure stepped closer, eyes glowing like amber. "Do you still wonder who you are?" She nodded. "Then ask the water." And with that, it vanished. She stood there, heart pounding, breath visible in the cold. Ask the water? She walked to the stream, bent down, looked. Her reflection stared back, but not alone. Behind her, shapes shimmered. People, animals, trees, stars, all part of her, all within. She closed her eyes and whispered to the frozen current. "I don't want to be either Clara or Nantli. I want to be both." A gust of wind swirled. A single snowflake landed on her lips. She smiled. That was her answer. She ran back to camp, breath clouding in the air, feet light. The fire was still burning in Inoli's tent when she returned. "I know now," she said, bursting in. "I'm not lost. I'm not found. I'm becoming." He looked at her, long and slow, and nodded. "Then you're ready." "For what?" "For the final gift." From under his robe, Inoli pulled a pouch. Inside was a necklace. Not just any. Woven from horsehair, laced with feathers, holding in its center a small, perfect circle of turquoise. The tribe's symbol for unity. He placed it around her neck. "You are bridge. You are breath. You are both storm and stillness." She held the medallion in her hand, feeling its weight. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So was the eagle, before its first flight," Inoli said. The snow fell that night, soft, silent. The children woke to find their willow blanketed in white. But the footprints leading from it were already fading. The days grew shorter, fires burned longer, shadows stretched deeper, and Nantli walked among them like someone who belonged. Not just to the village, but to the spaces between breaths, between stories. She carved new paths with every step. She helped wrap the newborn twins with cedar branches to keep fevers away. She mended a boy's torn boot with pine resin and thread. She placed her hands on the old dog's head as it took its last breath, whispering to it in that soft, strange hum she carried in her chest. And when Taklishim fell sick with cough and blood in his lungs, it was Nantli who brought him water steeped with bark and root. Not from recipe, but from memory not hers, yet somehow still inside her. He lived. And when he rose days later, leaning on a staff, he touched her shoulder and said only, "You are of us." No applause, no ceremony. But it was enough. She smiled. Snow kept falling. Some nights, The wind howled so loud the tents groaned under it. But inside, by the fire, children huddled close to her. "Tell the story again," they whispered. "Which one?" "The first. The one about the trees." So she did, not with big words or long speeches, just the rhythm of her voice, the pause of breath, the spark in her eye. They leaned in, wide-eyed, as she spoke of silence, of rivers that remember names, of stones that hum with old truths. They didn't always understand. They didn't need to. One morning, after heavy snow, the village awoke to hoofprints. A rider had come, alone, wrapped in dark wool, face wind-chapped, beard white with frost. Her father. He had returned. He didn't speak at first, just looked at her, standing tall with ash on her fingers and feathers in her braid. She looked back, then handed him something. The music box. "I don't wind it much anymore," she said softly. He nodded, eyes wet. "I kept hoping you'd come back to me," he whispered. "I did," she said. "Just not all at once." He didn't ask her to leave, didn't beg. He just sat beside her on a log and listened to her describe the willow, the blue stone, the dreams. They sat there a long time, saying very little. But when he stood to go, she walked him back to the trail and hugged him, tight. Neither said goodbye. No one needed to, because they both knew now. Some things don't need to be held forever to remain part of you. That night, Nantli stood by the fire, music box in one hand, medallion resting on her chest. The village danced. Drums echoed across the snowfields. She didn't join in right away. She watched, and then, slowly, stepped into the circle. One foot, then another. And the rhythm found her. Not forced, not borrowed, but rising from somewhere deeper than blood or memory. She danced, eyes closed, arms wide. And in the flicker of flame light, the wind shifted. The trees leaned in. The stars blinked closer. And far, far off in the darkness, something ancient smiled. She was no longer between. She was the place they met.